Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January 18th, 2023 meeting of the Menlo Park Environmental Quality Commission. And Ms. Lucky, would you please call roll?
Thank you, Chair Cabot. So at this time, I'll call roll, and you can state verbally whether you are present, and if you're not, we'll know that you're absent. So Chair Cabot.
Present.
Vice Chair Headley.
Present.
Commissioner Elkins.
Present.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Present.
Commissioner Evans.
Here.
Commissioner Lynn.
Present.
And Commissioner McKenna.
Here.
In person.
All right, thank you. So it looks like we've got all 7 of us. And then we're ready to call for any public comment for items not on the agenda. Ms. Lucky, could you make that announcement?
Yes, thank you, Chair Cabot. So if there's any members of the public who are virtual or online who would like to make public comment on an item that is not on the agenda, you can use the raised hand feature that's at the bottom of your screen or next to your name, and I'll be able to unmute you and you can speak to the commission for up to 3 minutes. And there are also no members of the public in the room that we're in. So we're just looking at the online attendees if anybody would like to speak at this time. And if you're calling in from a landline, you just need to push *9 and I'll be able to see your virtual hand. Okay, at this time, I do not see any hands raised. Chair Cabot, I return. Oh, I'm sorry. There is one hand raised.
All right.
David Axelrod, I am going to unmute you. You should be able to speak.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for the chance to speak. My name is David Axelrod. I'm a local pediatric cardiologist at Stanford, and I live in Menlo Park as well. I've communicated with a number of you, especially Ms. Elkins, I think, about the issue of gas-powered lawn equipment. I brought this up a few times at our city council meeting, and I guess I'm a little bit concerned about the lack of response or the kind of inability to get action on the item. I feel like Leah put together an incredibly comprehensive, complete, and really well-written document, kind of illustrating the concerns of using these the equipment that are really all ubiquitous throughout our community, and I think are really having important negative health effects on our community. And so I guess what I'd like maybe some advice on or some next steps is, what do we do as community members when you have a concern that seems pretty obvious and something that needs to be addressed in an equitable way that addresses this in a way that doesn't penalize the people that are using these lawn tools, but when we just kind of can't seem to get community action, at least at the city council level. And I think I'd be happy to support moving forward with this, using kind of my voice as a pediatrician and a health advocate. I think it's a really important issue, both for noise and combustion of gasoline and oil, and also dispersing particulate matter throughout the air. So for kids' lungs, for kids' sleep, and also for the people using the tools, I think it's really important. And I'd love to be able to move this forward. And I think I first spoke about this topic in November of 2020. So it's been, or no, sorry, November 2021. So it's been well over a year with really not much activity other than a questionnaire that went out that I'm not sure what we did with those results. So looking for guidance from you all. Thank you so much for all of the work that you do. And I'll leave my comments there.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Axelrod. for making the public comments again and sharing with us your concerns on that. And so, Ms. Lucky, are there any suggestions or actions that the commission can take with an item not on the agenda?
Thank you, Chair Cabot. So thank you, Mr. Axelrod, for your comment to the commission. If you want to reach out to me, so where we left off last with the city council was a study session in October where they directed staff to pursue drafting a ordinance that would regulate gas-powered landscaping equipment. And we are going to be bringing that back to city council like April, May of this year. And the reason for that kind of time length is to conduct outreach. They had a particular interest in conducting outreach to landscapers and gardeners. And so we've been very active, Ori and I in the community, as well as others, volunteers like Leah and some of her peer group as well in handing out flyers about a state incentive that's available where landscapers and gardeners, not for homeowners, but landscapers and gardeners can get a 70% discount on electric equipment, but it's only at certain stores. And we've been having pretty good success in directing landscapers and gardeners to the discounted stores. So I talked to a dealer this week and they've said that our outreach has been really helping. And also we're asking about their transition as well, what they think of it, and kind of giving them a heads up so before we make a final decision, before the city council makes a final decision. So hopefully it helps, but feel free to reach out to me. My emails are llucky@menlopark.gov.
Rebecca, I don't know if it's possible for, I suppose Dr. Axelrod could keep in touch with you and or keep tabs on upcoming agendas in case he or others with whom he's in contact want to participate in public comment at that meeting in April or May, I think you said, when it comes forward for vote in ordinance form.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Evans. So right now we are still working on our website. So it should be up pretty soon where you can subscribe to updates. And I just had it up. So it's a pretty, I think it's Menlo Park /ZELE.org. And we're also going to be sending out quite a bit of information through mailers as well. You can also Google probably ZELE and Menlo Park, and you'll probably start to find the webpage once it's up. And we do have a survey as well that we're going to be launching.
All right, thank you. So that brings us to item D1, approving the November 16th, 2022 minutes of our last EQC meeting. Hopefully everyone had a chance to look at them, and is there a motion to approve? All right.
I move
So
to
Vice Chair
approve the
Headley.
minutes.
All right,
I second the motion.
all right. So,
Okay, so the motion is to approve the November 2022 minutes. Take roll call. You can just verbally state whether you say yes, no, or abstain, and we will be able to record the vote. So Chair Cabot,
yes,
Vice Chair Headley,
Yes.
Commissioner Elkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Evans,
Yes.
Commissioner Lynn,
Yes.
and Commissioner McKenna.
Yes.
The motion passes. Thank you.
all right, thank you. So now that brings us to item D2, to receive an informational presentation on the city fleet electric vehicle charging plan. So the plan to charge the city's municipal fleet of electric vehicles. Ms. Lucky, is there a presentation to queue up for us?
There is. So Mr. Corey Paz is going to be giving the presentation. And just give us a moment to upload it.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to keep joining without video because I think I'm on
Yeah.
video there. Okay, this is great. Okay, and then that. And then if I share my screen, should be able to share this presentation. Just 1 second. Okay, so here we go.
Right.
This is nice because now I can actually see what everybody else sees. It's not going into read mode. Here we go. Okay, so thank you to the commission and to Sustainability Manager Lucky. I'm Management Analyst Ori Paz. I'm here to present on the fleet EV charging plan for the city. So again, as maybe I'm not going fast enough. I'll just go at this speed here. So again, we'll be talking about the fleet EV charging plan. We'll do a little bit of a brief explanation of why we're looking at electric vehicles, how they fit into our goals as a city, talk about our emissions profile, the chargers that we studied, and then get into our immediate EV charging plan, take a look at what we're planning over the next 7 years before the 2030 goal target of our climate action plan, some information about the incentives that we've been made aware of and those that we're pursuing, and then we can talk a little bit about next steps. So why are we looking at electric vehicles? Very simple explanation is that we're trying to reduce vehicle emissions to, one, improve air quality, which is a worthwhile endeavor all on its own. It's also important to help us to reach our climate action plan goals, to fight the worst effects of climate change. Part of those goals involve the strategy CAP number 5, which is to eliminate fossil fuel use in city operations by 2030. And so our vehicle emissions, as you'll see in a moment, are a big part of that. And then there's also a financial incentive for the city to reduce vehicle emissions, both on a per mile basis. There's a savings of about an average of 6 cents per mile savings there. And then there's also a social cost of carbon that was identified within the climate action plan. And so as we look at reducing the emissions from our vehicles, there's savings that are seen there. And then there's also reduced maintenance costs for electric vehicles. It's a less complicated machine, and so some of the standard maintenance that you see for internal combustion engines, you don't have the same level of maintenance that's required for electric vehicles, and then you're not paying for oil changes and things like that. If we take a quick look at our fleet emissions, we can see that we are made up of 5 different departments, and our emissions profile, as one might predict, is predominantly comprised of emissions from the police department, and that's because they're in their vehicles all day patrolling this community and making sure things are safe. And so, they're moving a lot more miles than some other divisions. But this snapshot gives us a good opportunity to identify which vehicles would be the greatest opportunities to electrify and then reduce those emissions. And then again, as I mentioned in the previous slide, there are different cost savings. So annually, if we did convert the entire fleet to electric or other zero emission vehicles, we'd be seeing approximately $82,000 a year in savings from there. So that's pretty exciting. But with the different department types come different duty cycles and different needs. And so we studied a range of different chargers. They're each a little bit different in their makeup, ranging from these lower power level 2 chargers you can see on the left side of your screen, all the way up to battery integrated chargers, which are they take in the same input as the level 2, but they're able to deliver it at 200 kilowatts, similar to some heavy duty fast chargers. You can see the bottom line, the costs vary for these. And so we worked with an internal interdepartmental team and our consultants to find a mix of chargers that met the needs of each of the divisions, while also considering the limited electrical capacity within city facilities, and then trying to give ourselves a good step forward so that we can continue to purchase electric vehicles to replace the internal combustion vehicles. So here's a table that outlines the recommended EV charging plan in the immediate term. And so when we say immediate term, it's in the next 2 years. And so there's the level 2 chargers we would be installing 4 new ports of level 2 charging, 6 additional ports of the lower power DC fast chargers, and then 4 of these battery integrated chargers. And they would be in 5 different parking areas. So the lower level DC fast chargers would go to the police department. I actually have a map of it here. So you can see this is very busy, but I'll walk you through it. So stay with me. Actually, we'll start at the top left of the screen. This is the CC lot, or the city council chambers lot. And so this is where the majority of the fleet pool vehicles are parked currently. So 2 ports of level 2 charging go in there. Moving to the right, this is a secure police department parking lot, which is actually below the street level. And so we would be seeing 6 ports of the DC fast charging there for police and patrol. Moving up, there's actually a ramp here that will bring you back up to street level. And there's an upper police department secure lot where one of the battery integrated chargers would be installed. And there is an existing dual port level 2 that was moved over into that secure lot as part of the ongoing Tesla police patrol pilot program. Moving kind of through the parking lot, these are other existing chargers. And so there's a dual port charger over by the parking lot near the recreation center that's available to the community. And then there's 2 other charging stations here, one that's reserved for staff, and then another one that's available to the public. If you go down Laurel Street and take a left on Burgess, you can get to our corporation yard. And on the exterior of the corporation yard, we're proposing 1 battery integrated DC fast charger that would be near the existing pumps. So city vehicles could come and fill up similar to the current operations. And then 2 ports of level 2 charging that would be behind the courtyard gate. And there are 2 existing ports within the secure corporation yard parking area. So that's our immediate phase plan, and the process for this would be to take this to the city council. So it's either going to go to city council next week or early in February, depending on agenda availability. And once it's gone to the city council, staff would release the RFP that's under development. And that RFP is a request for proposals for design and engineering services to design the plan. And then once we've gone through that process, we would work with internal stakeholders to review the design, make sure it works for everybody, take it through the permitting process, and then we get into construction. And our plan is to have whoever does the design let us know which is going to be the most expeditious phase of the project, and we would do that one first, so then we can get charging online with limited interruption and limited impact to city operations. Here you can see this is an overview of kind of the longer term plans. So in the same areas that I described, we would be adding charging over time. And the idea here is as part of this initial project, we can literally lay the groundwork for the future projects by installing conduit and right sizing and making sure we have junction boxes, which are kind of ports in the ground, so that in the future we can more easily bring in wiring and install charging bases, so that we could add another 5 ports to the city council chambers lot, another 5 ports to the police upper lot, and then 4 additional ports at the corporation yard. And this would be over the span of the next 7 years, to get us to the point where by 2030, we have a fully electrified fleet. So one of the things that has been really important for staff as a consideration is how we can mitigate the impact to the city budget. And so identifying incentive opportunities and programs that can provide a variety of assistance to us has been critical. There are a number available. The one that's kind of most exciting, because we're just about to have our kickoff meeting with them, is a program through Peninsula Clean Energy. And they're providing a fleet program that gives, not only do they give technical assistance, but they also help us to identify, based on our plans, which other incentive programs we would qualify for. So it's kind of a gift that keeps on giving, because we'll learn a little bit more about the other programs that are available. And then they'll also help us to tailor our applications so that we have a better chance of receiving money that would help offset some of the costs. There's also a program through PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, and they're helping to provide front of the meter equipment. So that's your transformer and everything that goes up until the meter. So there's a lot of very expensive infrastructure there that this program would cover the cost of. And then there's also a rebate at $7,000 a vehicle for these medium duty vehicles. And so we're looking to get our application in to participate in that program by the end of January. And then there's some other PCE programs that PCE will help us to identify whether or not that we can qualify for. And there's also the CHARGE program, which we're hoping to learn more about. And all of these would provide money at the end of a project. So fortunately, we don't need to get all of our ducks in a row quite yet. And we want to make sure that the project is designed in such a way that it will meet the needs of the city operations. And then we find the incentives that will work for us, keeping our eye on them, but not letting the incentives kind of dictate and then end up having to install additional chargers later. So with that, we are excited for next steps. So some of the immediate next steps are that we're bringing an informational item to the city council. Like I said, it would either be January 24th, or if we'll know in the next day whether that meeting is possible. Otherwise, we'd be looking at the February 14th or a recent or soon thereafter meeting. Following that, daylighting it with the city council, making them aware of the plan. We would be posting our request for proposals for the immediate phase sometime in February. And again, we would be leveraging the programs through Peninsula Clean Energy and PG&E for our more long-term EV charging needs. And then all of that would be presented as part of the 5-year CIP when we get into the budget process, starting in March, but going for approval by the city council in July of 2023. So really right around the corner. And that's it for me. I'm happy to take any questions if there are.
So we'll first start with some clarifying questions. I have a quick one before opening it up to other commissioners. Are you looking for any action by the EQC?
Oh, not at this time. This is more of an informational presentation to keep the EQC apprised of what staff is planning for the internal chargers for the fleet.
All right, thank you. And so are there any clarifying questions by commissioners before we open it up for public comment and then come back for any commission discussion? Okay, and seeing no hands raised. I think we can open this up for public comment.
Thank you, Chair Cabot. So for virtual members that are in attendance, if you would like to make public comment on this informational presentation about the city's EV charging plan for its fleet, you can use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the screen or next to your name. If you're on a landline, you can press *9 and I'll be able to unmute you. I do not see any hands raised at this time. Chair Cabot, I return the meeting back to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And thank you very much, Mr. Paz. That was a interesting presentation about what's going on in getting the city fleet charged. It looks like you've got plans for charging the pool cars, the patrol cars, and other police vehicles, as well as public works vehicles. Is that right? All right. Thanks. And so I'd like to open it up and hear if there are any commissioner comments. And Commissioner Evans.
Oh, I think, okay. Thank you, Ori, for the presentation. It was well laid out and much appreciated. I was just curious if we have the information, and maybe it's publicly available already and I've missed it, on how the number of these ports and the plans for them translates into the number of current electric fleet and fleet that is about to be transitioned to become electric.
So so through the chair, may I ask a clarifying question of Commissioner Evans?
Yes.
Thank you. Is the question, what is the ratio of charging ports to vehicles, or is it?
Maybe, not necessarily. I guess I was just trying to figure out, as we learn now about the number of chargers going in, what does that mean for the number of our fleet that either is electric or will be becoming electric in the next 2 years? Like what are these chargers designed to support in terms of number of vehicles at the police department or public works?
Got it. Yes. Thank you for the clarification. So one of the things that we did working with our consultants is we looked at calculating the number of miles each charger or each charging port can charge in a given day. And then we have some of that data from data collection that was done in 2020, which was not the best data year, but we're going to do it again in February of this year to confirm that it's matching up. But essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to have enough charging miles per day to double the average daily need. So then we're not going to have a situation where vehicles that have regular schedules would not have charge. And then the vehicles, mostly like police patrol vehicles, which are out for 12 hours at a time, or if they're doing 2 shifts in a day, then that vehicle is going 24 hours a day. So those vehicles are a little bit harder to charge, and that's where some of the higher power chargers come in to play, because if they can plug in during a briefing, they have an hour typically, unless they're called away. And so the higher power chargers can support their operations. So right now we have too many vehicles for the charging that we have. And so the only thing that's really been helping us is that there have been supply chain delays. And so our Ford F-150 Lightnings that were purchased 2 years ago, we're still waiting on some of those. The purchases from August of 2022 that were finalized in October, those have been delayed also. So really this immediate phase is going to be enough to support what we've already purchased. and then purchases over the next 3 years. And then our hope is to learn from how our charging schedules and some of the things that we're doing with kind of the buffers that we're putting in, how those work, and then we'll use that information to inform the charging plan, for fiscal year like 24, 25 and on. Does that answer the question? It's like the driving force here is that we do not have enough charging presently for all of the vehicles that we've already purchased. That's why we need this immediate phase. So immediately.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
And Vice Chair Headley.
I think Commissioner McKenna had his hand up before me.
Oh.
Okay.
Sorry, I could not see your hand. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. I guess 2 quick questions. One is the chargers that are being installed for the city. Will any of those also be available to the public when the city's not using them? And the second question is, did the city look at the cost of doing all the charging work at once versus phases? And is it possible that doing it all at once might cost overall less and therefore maybe allow the city to ramp up the purchase of EV vehicles quicker?
There's good questions. So to the first question, the plan for this immediate charging phase it's for city fleet vehicles. What we are thinking is that if, and we need to work through some of this, but if some of the chargers that are now being used by city vehicles or employee vehicles, if we can pull that charging demand away from the ones that are in the public lots, then those existing chargers that are in the public lots will become available. So this should create more availability for community charging, but the plan is for the chargers that are going to be installed as part of this immediate phase plan, those would be dedicated for city fleet vehicles. And then to the second part of the question, I'll take the second part of the question first, in that if we did everything together, we would definitely see economies of scale. And so it would overall be cheaper. But because we're in a situation where we don't have enough charging for the vehicles that we've already ordered and continue to order, we need to do a first phase first, and then kind of use that as an opportunity to inform the latter phase. And that's just because where we are. Like if we had started 10 years ago, like the best time to do a comprehensive EV charging plan is 10 years ago. The second best time is today. But the other thing that we're trying to do as part of this plan is make sure that we are planning for that future. And so things like the above ground conduit that we've been looking at, and making sure that we're sizing everything so that we're not going to run into a situation that we've run into before, where we want to, pull more wire through to an area, and then we can't because of sizing issues. So things like that. We are trying to be forward looking so we can kind of use this as a leapfrog for our next project. But no, we're not able to pause and do it comprehensively at this time. Or that's staff's recommendation, is to do this part first. But ultimately, we will need to go to the city council, and if they decide that we should stop and do it all together, we would do what they direct us to do.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, and Vice Chair Headley.
Yeah, thank you. My question was around ensuring that there were charging spaces available for city employees. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yes, yeah, and some of it is still evolving. So one of the things that was pretty exciting is when we look at our overall emissions profile, one of the things that the city is taking responsibility for as part of Climate Action Plan Goal number 5 to eliminate fossil fuel use in city operations and the 90% reduction there, is it includes employee commute vehicles. So sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does. It's like a scope 2, scope 3. But our goals do include that. And so it was exciting earlier this year when the city, I think the city council or city leadership announced that 3 hours of charging would be provided complimentary to city employees. And so we're anticipating that that benefit will continue into the future. What we still need to work out is which chargers would be available for city staff. So the ones that are in the police secure area, we're not going to have people kind of going in and out of that area. Similarly, at the courtyard, we may be able to make the kind of the fueling station charger available. But we are keeping that in mind, and the intent is to try to preserve that benefit and make the city council aware of the emission savings. And then also it's a behavioral change that can spark, because if you don't have anywhere to charge a vehicle, it makes it very difficult, especially for folks who are living in multifamily housing, to make the leap to an electric vehicle.
Great, thank you.
And Commissioner Schmidt.
Thanks. Thanks for that. It was a really good update, Ori. I guess the question I have is, it's going to be a fairly comprehensive program. Are there lessons or repeatable elements that can be used for, say, commercial building charging stations or multifamily housing charging stations, like maybe using the same vendor or using the same process flow? Or it's more of a general question of like, this is really well thought out and seems like it's going to get through pretty quickly. Could we use it for some of the thornier problems as well to build extra charging stations?
I think there's definitely lessons learned that can apply to the private sector. I think some of the most exciting pieces have been about the specific technologies that we became aware of and are looking at. And so those are in the realm of the battery integrated chargers and then the above ground conduit and charging bases. So the kind of the two biggest hurdles for EV charging that we've learned about are the trenching is expensive and invasive and disruptive, and then the building infrastructure, so the actual electrical service components that are serving the building. There's limits on how much you can add to those without having to either upgrade a transformer or a switch gear, and then any of that really adds time and money to projects, and then coordination also PG&E. And so with the battery integrated chargers, you're able to set in a charger. It is more expensive than some of the other chargers, but it takes in the same power level as the level 2. So the input is around 7 kilowatts to 26 kilowatts. You can set what that is, and then it uses that to charge a battery, and then the battery dispenses the power to the vehicles. And so that can give it, for some of the vehicles, it's beyond their maximum acceptance power rate. And so they just take the max that they can take. And then for others, it's giving a very fast charge up until the point where that battery is exhausted, and then it would give whatever the input level is. Those are also exciting from a demand. There's like demand charges over time. So if someone, depending on how their bill is set up, you can also use that to avoid the peak times and then kind of bank cheaper electricity. And then the above ground conduit is really exciting because, one, it will give you the opportunity to kind of not dig up your entire parking lot. And then it also provides, a speed bump. So if you want that entering and exiting your parking area and drive aisles, that's kind of a freebie that you get from this. And then the other thing is that it is flexible and adaptable. And so if over time, if a multifamily property owner is not wanting to take the leap because they think in 25 years, it's going to be something different, this could maybe be peace of mind for them and help them to think of it as not the forever solution, but the thing that we need to do. most immediately to address the climate change issue crisis.
All right.
Thanks.
So I thank you very much, Mr. Paz. I also had a couple of questions and suggestions. It sounds like you've got the ability to get most or all of the trenching and conduits done in the first phase, or is there some of that that happens in the second phase? Because it seems like that's the expensive thing that you'd really enjoy getting all done together. And then finally just installing a few more heads on the thing is a smaller second phase, I would think.
Definitely, yeah, and what we're planning to do is yes, do as much as we can as part of this first phase. The only issue that we're running into is that there are a few unknowns. And so as far as, our long-term plans, we're anticipating that we will need either an upgrade to our transformer from PG&E or a new service altogether. And so one of the things that they're offering as part of their PG&E fleet program is to do that analysis. And then if we do need an upgrade based on our need over the next 5 years, PG&E would pay for all of it. And by that, like the ratepayers would, as part of programs that have already been in place. The thing that we're trying to do as part of this project is make sure that when that dedicated EV transformer comes online, we are able to connect the existing chargers to that new transformer, which is a kind of a tricky design component, but it's technically completely possible. And all we have to do is kind of keep track of where some of those things are going to go. And then by using the above ground conduit, it gives us an opportunity to kind of reroute in some ways, and then lowers the overall cost of the trenching. So as much as possible, we're going to try to do what we can as part of this phase, but we do anticipate that there may be some trenching costs or things that we're not able to address with the above ground conduit in the future.
All right, thank you. One thing I might recommend for your next presentation, if you could have a picture of that above ground conduit, which I think looks like a speed bump strip that goes in the parking lot. So it's not overhead conduit, it's on the pavement conduit.
Yes.
And that would help people see what you mean by it being, flexible or repositionable if you need to. It does sound like a good way to accommodate some uncertainty and get the design going. Let's see. Oh, I thought I'd share with you that the Biden administration has finished their assessment of the social cost of carbon, and there are new estimates out there. You mentioned the $160 figure that just came out as one little piece from the climate action plan, but the Biden administration has a wide array of figures. I think the central one for them is the $190 a ton, as they've looked at, done some serious analysis to determine what is that cost to society of having another ton of emissions in the air. And one idea too to explore in the design is positioning the stands and or parking space striping for some of the units so that in case you needed to, you could replace the level 2 type chargers with the battery type chargers. At some point in the future, just still using the same wires, but being able to charge faster. Just thinking ahead to as things evolve and those battery-based chargers may become more affordable, and that may be a way to service more vehicles at once down the same wire without a new wiring adventure. But anyway, it's great to see the progress you're making on this, and to think about to the whether that PG&E study that you've talked about can integrate the whole campus electrification that you're looking at for the Burgess Pool and other buildings on the Burgess campus there.
Yes. So was the last one a question or a hope?
Just a suggestion, hearing that you were talking to PG&E about doing that analysis for a transformer for the vehicles. And then I wanted to bring up the idea to be sure to look at the chance to have it sized large enough that something can still handle the the buildings and pool, which may have, noticeable loads, typically smaller than car charging, I think, but still pretty noticeable.
Yes, and so to clarify, we did this immediate phase is sized so that the buildings at the civic campus and the corporation yard, we used the information that we received from the facility conditions assessments to look at the electrification equipment that would be needed for the facilities. And so this is sized so that we can do this first round of chargers and electrify the buildings, with the exception of the pool, because that's a massive additional load, and so that's going to need to be a separate service. Sadly, we learned from PG&E in kind of the preliminary talks for our application that this fleet program, that the transformer can only be sized for vehicles within a certain weight range. So we're working to see, if we can stagger our replacement timeline so that we bring more of those vehicles online within the window that counts, so that we can get that transformer as big as possible, because we are anticipating larger loads. But if anybody has the ear of PG&E, it would be great if there was a whole facility electrification program with dedicated PG&E staff, because one of the things that's most exciting about the fleet program is that there are dedicated staff who are reviewing it, and so the timelines that they're providing to us are drastically faster than kind of the typical new service application process.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm glad you guys are making this kind of progress and looking ahead at the buildings, the pool, and the fleet all together to the extent possible. And then plus having that learning experience of what is it like to deal with other people's programs that are designed, and then you run into constraints that feel arbitrary and they prevent good solutions. So it's one of those things to learn about and be careful for in our own designs. So thank you very much, and that moves us to our next item. To review and discuss the Environmental Quality Commission quarterly report to City Council, item D3. And so, Ms. Lucky, are you able to put the presentation up on the screen to share with the commissioners, and then I can talk my way through it? This is a repeat or another chapter of the ongoing quarterly communications with the City Council. This is the second one for covering parts of 2022, so it'll be delivered early in 2023. So we're not quite keeping up with quarterly, but we do hope to get on the council agenda sometime soon and share this information with them. All right, can we go to the next slide? So we'll be telling them about those challenges, opportunities, and a little review of our activities and some of what we've been hearing from community concerns, and then giving them a chance to give us some guidance. Next. We tell them who we are. Next. Give them another update on the climate science. We've all been living through a couple of weeks of the outcome of a changing climate, having been in the path of multiple atmospheric rivers, kind of a very unusual situation, but it's just all part of what's going on globally as we pollute the atmosphere with more and more heat trapping gases. And so we'll we'll just try to explain a little bit about that, and that we're up to 1.1 degrees Celsius rise so far, and that each half degree rise has about 4 times more damage and cost to society and species. And that the existing equipment already in place that's fossil fired around the world is enough to push the temperature rise up to the 2 degree limit as it runs just for the rest of its normal life. And that's that really sobering fact that tells us how fast we have to accelerate if we're going to try to stay under 2 degrees C or even the 1.5 degrees C target of the IPCC. But letting the council know there's really no more room, no more climate space below 2 degrees for any new or reinstalled fossil fueled equipment. And that every new piece is over the top of the 2 degree limit from day one. You know, people get confused by hearing we have 7 years to get to a certain point, and they think they have 7 years to not act. And we need to help people understand that that's not the way the science is playing out. We don't have time anymore to not act and stay within targets. And next. So we'll be making the point that to hold to the 2 degree rise, society would be looking at every opportunity immediately to pivot to electric alternatives at the convenient times. And those are new construction or when adding cooling, and at the time of building additions or building remodels, and at the time of device burnout and replacement. Those are the convenient times. Other times are less convenient. So we try to share with them that need for policy in those areas. Next. So our status is that our Menlo Park Climate Action Plan really closed the ambition gap. We set a target with 90% reduction of emissions by 2030. And that's a science-based target. It's in proportion with holding to the 1.5 degree rise, and that was unanimously approved by council. But we still have a policy gap and an achievement gap. And we need to help council understand those dilemmas we're facing, is that our target is nice, but we haven't put in the policies that'll meet our target. And so we need to be working on those policies. And then the achievement gap is just, once you have the policy in place, are people following it? Are they doing, let's say you had a policy that all new water heaters had to be heat pump water heaters when they go in. And then the achievement issue is, are contractors and citizens putting in the heat pump water heaters when they put in new water heaters? Next. So this slide is covering just that a lot of things have changed since our last quarterly report to them, with the passage of the federal IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. It really introduced a whole lot of new incentives and assistance programs that will be tilted up by the state in the next year that will really assist low income and medium income households, say households earning less than $207,000 a year with a family of 4. Those kind of households will be getting extra incentives. And then it already, as of 2 weeks ago, started federal tax credits, 30% tax credits for a number of these types of devices. So that has changed at the federal level. The state has allocated some money to do some other heat pump incentives for space heating heat pumps. They haven't rolled those out yet, but they'll be coming out in March or April. Peninsula Clean Energy in the whole county of San Mateo has introduced $3,000 incentives for heat pumps for hot water and $3,500 for space heating heat pumps. And on both of those, there's a little bonus of $500 extra if people put those in by March, but that's not a big deal to the council members, as we're looking more at a policy for the long term. Just wanted to have council understanding that the levels of incentives going on around us and supporting our residents and businesses are increasing, and that it's making the electrification more economical. And then another thing happening in the background, if you get your PG&E bills and you still have gas, you'll notice some very high gas rates in your January bill, and your February bill will be very high rates, up to $5 a therm, I think, in February. Next. So anyway, all this starts creating opportunities to become more bold on policy, and I'm hoping the council will be digesting that and looking at the support being provided by the federal, state, and county entities, including PCE. And then the regional entity, BayREN, is offering $1,000 incentives for heat pumps and heat pump water heaters. And so that's giving the city the opportunity to demonstrate some science-based policy by starting the timeline to no longer permitting the installation of gas-fired equipment when people are replacing their equipment or building new additions or doing remodeling. So that would go beyond the existing REACH codes that apply mostly to new construction. And so this would start applying to times people are buying devices to provide heat or hot water or air conditioning. So that when somebody wants a new air conditioner, they spend the extra $1,000 to get a two-way heat pump that does the cooling they wanted and does heating and qualifies for many thousands of dollars of tax credits and incentives. So it kind of becomes a no wallet impact problem for the citizens who move forward with the heat pumps. Next. So we're looking at asking the city to pursue some important actions in 2023, to adopt electrification REACH codes, to pursue the CAP 1 action, and that is the electrification of 90% of buildings by 2030, to really get moving on that to the extent that we can, and to improve the new construction REACH codes that they just recently passed to remove some costly exemptions that are out there. And those exemptions let people set themselves up for expensive retrofit situations by installing, gas devices that they later have to remove, say for cooking or drying or fireplaces. And then the REACH codes are needed for remodels and additions, et cetera, where people are doing all this work and maybe they're changing water heaters as part of their remodel. And then they're needed to help prevent the costly installation of fossil-fired replacement equipment and one-way air conditioners. And so hopefully then we'll be able to help the community pivot towards doing these climate-saving electrification alternatives. And there may be some tough cases where people don't, they have some constraint that prevents them from being able to install the electrification at some hardship. And so the city may want to explore in lieu fees where somebody would be able to pay into a fund instead of doing the installation on their own property, if that is what it takes to help get things passed. Next. So in summary, we can tell them that the city has waited for economics to improve, and they have improved, and that policy improvements around us have made electrification now a less costly policy than status quo gas, and that local improvements can have multiple benefits, both in health and safety, as Mr. Paz mentioned earlier, and in operational cost savings compared to an escalating gas price. And they can be needed, or these improvements are needed now more than ever as we're seeing the climate change in real time. Next. So we'll provide a little bit of review of our EQC activities, and mentioning that the first year climate action plan activities are still ongoing, but more are needed. And so what happened when we passed the climate action plan, we only included 6 major activities out of about 21 that were on the list when before the pandemic hit and made us trim our expectations for first year activities. And the city staff have been pursuing those first year activities, but it's taking a while. And we've also provided at one point some recommendations on staffing levels that may be required to accelerate to the pace of the climate action plan. And I'd really like the city council to take another look at staffing for climate preservation to see what level is needed, because this level of investment and or damage, either way, it's going to be going into the hundreds of millions of dollars. And it may make sense to have multiple city staff in different departments or however the city wants to organize, but multiple staff looking at how to thread that needle and preserve the most value for our community. So then I also share with them that the EQC members in the outreach subcommittee as individuals have been doing some outreach workshops on community conversations, kind of collaborative conversations with the community. One will happen actually tomorrow evening on how electrification is getting easier, but individuals were also helpful in Earth Day events and in getting conversations going in different parts of the community. Next. So we held 2 community collaborative discussions, and more are on the way. We want to talk about the focus on outreach education rather than policy proposals. So we've been focusing on climate science and techniques of electrification or history or education about available incentives. And also Commissioner Evans has been assisting in the city's low-income housing electrification project. Next. So just recently, the EQC developed its 23-24 work plan and formed subcommittees covering these 6 topics here, 7. And so we would just like the council to take a look at updating the roles and responsibilities of the EQC to reflect an increased focus on climate preservation, resilience, and adaptation to climate change. When we look online at our existing roles and responsibilities, it doesn't pay too much attention to the climate change issues. It looks at a lot of other issues. So here, this looks like our current EQC responsibilities. And we're thinking that the community is evolving and the activities of the EQC are evolving, and it may make sense for the council to take a look at the responsibilities and roles of the EQC and where they'd like to align them with the needs of the community. Next. All right, and that as the EQC has looked it over, we've recommended that our priorities be focused on the implementation and planning in the climate action plan, and on climate resilience and adaptation, on preserving and expanding the urban canopy, and on green and sustainable initiatives, which include things such as that which leads to healthy air, peaceful sound resource, and for example, maybe controlling or eliminating gas-fired lawn equipment, as was raised earlier today. Next. And that we've been hearing various concerns from community members in our public comments. So we've got a little list of them here. And also we've been grappling with the idea and the observation that there are many very interested and capable members of the community who are looking for ways to address climate preservation in the city. And so we'd welcome the council taking a look at possibilities to include citizen volunteers in more activities in the city's climate preservation planning and efforts. Next. All right, so then we throw it open to the council. They often don't comment on these things real time, but just to have it in front of them in their their long-term thinking, we're asking them to direct staff to change the roles and responsibilities of the EQC to better reflect the activities of the last several years and going forward. And that we're seeking approval from the City Council for our EQC work plan for 2023-24 and any additional guidance they want to provide. Right. Okay, so that's basically how I'll be trying to present it to the council, and I enjoy hearing your thoughts and ideas for how to improve that. And Commissioner Evans.
Thank you, Commissioner Cabot, for putting that together. I'm sure it took a lot of time and it looks fantastic. And thanks in advance for being willing to present all of that to council.
Well, and that was the way it looks good is staff and Commissioner and Vice Chair Headley working on that.
Thank you, Vice Chair Headley and staff. Yes, no, it looks fantastic. Thanks to all involved. I do have a few comments and potential recommended additions if you're willing, or
Yes.
you can hear my thoughts and do what you want with them. There was a slide maybe halfway through on important city actions where you talk about updating REACH codes and the pieces of that are important. I might suggest also including streamlining permitting and updating relevant zoning and noise ordinances to streamline electrification. I know that those are big pieces that staff is working on and that is likely worth flagging to council as important city actions. Later on, you mentioned staffing. I don't know if I think staffing and permitting, I don't know where we're at with that. Last time I heard, we were trying really hard to hire more people for our permitting staff, and it sounds like we need more man and woman power there. And so it might be worth, on the slide where you talk about staffing, including a plug for staffing in our permitting department. Certainly as we scale, we're going to need more people to do the permitting work. So that's my first big thing. The second thing is, do you think it could be worth it to add a slide that reminds the folks, I think it was August 2020, shortly after I joined the EQC, when we first tried to get our burnout ordinance in place and it didn't work. And the big request from council at that time was, can you please go back and develop some new tools and services that can make this easier for everyday people to electrify their homes? That was the big request. And in answer to that, we are doing that. And in two pieces. One is Menlo Park now has a program with Block Power. We're still getting it up and running because we're in year one and we're being very deliberate about how we design that to make sure that it works very well. But the goal is, in the next year to do 100 homes, and then in the years that follow, about 1,000 buildings a year. And that's just hopefully going to be designed to be a concierge service that will hold people's hands to make it much easier for them to do it. And I think that's an important service that's worth highlighting and shows that we've done the work, we've answered council's request to develop those tools, and look, now we're back and we have this. I think the other thing worth flagging in that would be that most people know that it's really difficult to find contractors to do the electrification work. And part of this Block Power program is that the city is working to, in partnership with the Job Train nonprofit, to develop a local workforce to do this work. And we anticipate having our first cohort of 20 or so new trainees sometime this year. And then the third thing is on the page that mentions that I'm doing the low income project. I would say projects. There's 2 major pilots in the works, but really I'm trying to help the city prioritize the electrification of our entire low-income community first. So I would say it's not just limited to project as it's written, but projects and you know, trying to prioritize and yeah, prioritize the entire low-income community.
All right, thank you.
Specifically, we have a goal to raise raise funds to cover 100% of the capital costs of those installations. Okay, so that was a lot, but you guys will know what makes sense to add or not. You don't have to do all of it, but those would be my recommendations. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, and Commissioner Schmidt.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's a solid deck. I like Angela, just some thoughts to share. I wonder if it would be good to flip the order of the 2 big requests, because the first part of the presentation focuses a lot on what the city council can do and like reach codes and a lot of activities, and then the second part focuses on the EQC itself and how we want to change the role. So I'm thinking, like, from a flow point of view, it would be great to get them to understand what the EQC kind of is seeing itself as doing, and maybe move that section to the beginning, and then the stuff that the city council can do in support of EQC and city priorities almost becomes second. And it's not a matter of prioritization, it's a matter of, we'd like them to understand that we're wanting to take more of an activist role, and that manifests in things like, you know, outreach, reach codes, all the other activities that we've listed. So that's just one thing to consider is you know, asking them to we start with kind of this and then go into some of the specifics. And then the second big thing is just some of the specifics I think we might want to reflect with maybe a bullet or another point. Is I want to make sure we mention the urban forest master plan, and that we have ongoing discussions with city staff and with Canopy on pieces of that. And I know we're still trying to, we're going to hear an update on that, but I want to reflect the fact that there's been a lot of work done already, and city council members are aware of that. So that's one piece of work to reflect. That we're looking at a model of collaborating with more nonprofits. So I think if we could call that out a little bit more, to say, I think, Tom, you had it in there about, you know, we're looking at a more collaborative model, but there are a lot of people who want to help and they're looking for avenues to help. I feel like if we could emphasize that collaborative model more. And then the last part is around Belhaven residents, and really calling out the fact that a number of us are spending time listening to what people in that community are really needing from an equity and a health and an environmental justice point of view. And, you know, one of the things that we want to do as an EQC is help gather their ideas, share their voices, encourage them to participate. So I just, that the Belhaven kind of aspect of that is a little bit lost, and maybe we can call it out a little bit more. And those conversations are ramping up, both from a collaboration and a conversation perspective. Anyway, those are just some suggestions.
All right, thank you very much. And I'm sorry, unfortunately, I had skipped a step and need to call for public comment. If we have any members of the public who would like to comment on that draft presentation to the council? And Ms. Lucky, are you able to call for comment?
Thank you, Chair Cabot. So if there are any members who are in virtual attendance, we don't have any members of the public in the room we're in. But if you would like to make public comment on this item for the chair's report to the city council on the commission's activities, you can use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen or next to your name, and I'll be able to allow you to talk by unmuting you. Okay, at this time, I do not see any hands raised. Thank you, Chair Cabot. I return the meeting back to you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lucky. And are there any other commissioner comments or suggestions?
Oh, sorry, Chair Cabot, just, so in this conversation, I just want to give a gentle reminder. So when this goes to city council, the chair or vice chair, whoever's available, will give the presentation. And it's typically around 10 minutes. So we do kind of have a limited amount of time. So that's one thing to consider in some of the edits. And then the other kind of part of it too is just kind of capturing what the commission has decided as a whole. And so I think it's good to mention the subcommittee activities kind of at a high level. But if the commission hasn't made a formal recommendation on some of the activities that the subcommittees are working on, we need to be a little bit careful about that aspect of it.
All right, thank you. Okay, and Commissioner Evans.
I was just going to say that if those of you who are working on this, if you choose to add a slide or part of a slide that talks about these tools and services that we are actively developing in response to what council asked us to develop the last time we approached them about reach codes, I'd be happy to put those bullets together just to reduce workload. I can keep them concise if you'd like.
Right.
If you don't want to include that, that's fine too. I'm just offering to make that available. I think it could be helpful to summarize some of the things that we've done to make all of this hopefully easier for residents in our city going forward.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful if you could produce that bullet list.
Okay.
That'd be very helpful. Thank you. All right, and any other comments or ideas? And all right, seeing none. We'll move on to item E1, which is reports and announcements from staff and commissioners. And so do any commissioners or staff have reports they'd like to share with us at this time?
I do, Chair Cabot. If I could start off, and then maybe Ori, he's given quite a bit of updates, but there's definitely other projects. Or did you want to start off?
No, I would just, do we need, or just for the minutes, was there anything that we needed from that last item?
Yes, good point.
Okay.
So just for that last item on the agenda, if there's general consensus on kind of the suggestions, it sounded like suggestions, but anyone can correct me if I misheard, then we can put them as notes in the minutes, and we probably do need an action to say yes, that we want Chair Cabot or Vice Chair Headley to provide this presentation to City Council. Thank you, Mr. Potts.
Yes, thank you. And so I'm looking through mine. I did take some notes about the suggestions that were made, and also noting Ms. Lucky's observation that we typically have only about 10 minutes. So it becomes a little bit of a prioritization issue, trying to figure out what will I take out in order to put something else in. But I definitely heard a couple of worthy things to substitute for some of the content. So I intend to try to incorporate what I can to improve the information so that council can get a sense of what's been going on since August 2021, I believe it was, when they asked us to be doing more outreach, or saying the city needs to do more outreach, and that things need to be made easier and more affordable. And so I hope to be able to report a little bit about what we're seeing going on in those areas and what we're doing about them. I haven't, so far I haven't figured out yet how to follow Commissioner Schmidt's suggestion of flipping the order of looking at or asking the council for feedback and guidance on the EQC activities before getting into the details of what's going on around us. So I'm having to ponder that a little bit. But Commissioner Schmidt.
Well, thanks, Chair Cabot. One suggestion, and it kind of goes to what you just said, is every time I talk to a member of city council, the joke is like they're definitely readers, the 700-page housing reports and all the other stuff that they have to read. So maybe one recommendation is, if in that what Rebecca was saying, where you only have a few minutes, maybe there's kind of 2 slides that can be the verbal presentation, but then everything else is included for reading. So I guess I would ask us not to cut the presentation down to fit what you're going to speak to, but maybe speak to 2 really good summary slides, and then everything else is sort of ordered in a really good structured table of contents or something. Because I do know they read a ton of information, and there's a lot of city council members who do study up on this stuff. So anyway, that's just a recommendation that kind of gets to your point about how we could flip the order, and then it becomes less important about flipping it. You could actually, if you only covered 2 slides verbally, it wouldn't matter as much which one you did first, I think. So,
all right, thank you. Okay, and then let's see. Do we have a motion to do something with the quarterly report? Yes, Commissioner Schmidt. Oh, and Commissioner Elkins.
Yeah, I think Jeff was muted, but I was just going to move that we adopt the presentation that Chair Cabot has presented us with, and trusting him to make the revisions as we've suggested.
All right, and is there a second?
Second.
All right, and so
I was
move.
only moving. Sorry, yeah, I'm glad. Thanks, Leah. That's what I was talking on it about as well. So thanks, Tom, for doing that.
All right, so it looks like it was moved by Commissioner Elkins and seconded by Commissioner McKenna. And can we
I'll
call
take
for a
roll
vote?
call. Yes. Chair Cabot,
Aye.
Vice Chair Headley,
Aye.
Commissioner Elkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Lynn,
Aye.
Commissioner Evans,
Aye.
and Commissioner Schmidt,
Aye.
and Commissioner McKenna.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And now we can move to item E1, reports and announcements from staff and commissioners.
Okay, so I would think I was trying to go first, but there are quite a few announcements. So I just wanted to make sure that all the commissioners were aware of an upcoming community meeting about the environmental justice and safety elements. So there's a community meeting on February 9th from 6 to 8 at the Bellhaven Branch Library. And then there's also one in Spanish on February 10th as well. And I did send a flyer out too. So they got all of that. Let me stop sharing my screen here. And a couple other items. So staff's hoping to meet with the City Council CAP 1 through 5 subcommittees. So that is Mayor Willison and Councilmember Nash to discuss phase 2 reach codes for existing buildings. And that will kind of propel us into a study session with the City Council to receive a further blessing on, beginning outreach on proposed measures for existing buildings and to enhance the new construction building requirements. And then we also did send we did put in our weekly newsletter the information about the upcoming community discussion on electrification that's going to be hosted by the citizen-led community group on climate action plan. And I sent out a link earlier this afternoon on that. It had some also just information about our storm events and how that's linked to climate change. And we haven't gotten any word yet from the California Energy Commission on when the city might receive the $4.5 million to support existing building electrification, but I am checking with them every couple of weeks to kind of ping them. They do have quite a bit of funding to get through, so we're not the only ones. They have a very long list. So they're definitely inundated on trying to get those funds dispersed. And we are still working through webpage updates for the enhanced reach codes that we just adopted for new construction and working on how to submit a successful electrification permit for existing buildings and working through kind of a decision tree using our permit platform on easily getting people the permit incentives when they're electrifying their buildings. And I think to date, the amount of incentives that have been dispersed the last time I checked was around $6,000. So, but we also are trying to catch up too. There's a bit of projects that have kind of, we're in the middle of their process when this was approved. So we're working through those as well. And then the CAL FIRE Urban Forest Grant project and kind of next steps. So as Commissioner Schmidt mentioned, or the subcommittee was really working on submitting a potential CAL FIRE Urban Forest Grant and kind of working with the city to do that. We talked about it quite a bit. We reframed where we could go and where we can get immediate need. And so where we left off with that discussion was the city's going to be holding the pen. So our city arborist, Jillian Keller, and management analyst, Joanna Chen and Brian Henry are working internally on the application using the draft. Thankfully, that was provided by the subcommittee. So that was really helpful on background information, as well as getting a lot of details that we could kind of easily prepare the application, and kind of just what we're left to do is figure out the budget, the staffing resources, and how we can move things along. So basically this project will undertake a canopy analysis, which is usually the first step to developing an urban forest master plan. And it'll involve significant tree plantings in the Bellhaven neighborhood and evaluate steps to ensure that there's equity addressed that supports residents in helping to grow the thriving canopy. So trying to find the barriers of, how do we work out with watering and taking care of the tree and ensuring that the residents are able to do that, and how can we assist with that. And so staff's going to be meeting with Canopy on a partnership for this grant application that's coming up. So I believe we need to submit kind of an initial concept mid-February, and if that's accepted, then we could submit a formal application in I think March or April. And so the urban forest master plan is definitely not being put on the back burner. It's going to be part of the conversation process in our upcoming budget cycle. So we're hoping to kind of connect those dots and on getting the budget and the resources for an overall urban forest master plan. So the grant's really a stepping stone to getting us into this larger process of an urban forest master plan. And early on in the meeting, I did talk about our zero emissions landscaping equipment outreach, about our potential draft rules and incentives. So we did send out a solid waste billing insert that goes out to about 8,500 customers in Menlo Park, so includes commercial and residential. We included the survey link and the website with information. We're having a bit of technology kind of issues with trying to link up the survey and the website, so it's not quite there, but I've been collecting information of people who've been trying, and so once it's up, I can email folks who've been trying to get to the survey or the website for information. And so right now, the plan is to have webinars for landscapers and gardeners in mid-February to March. And we do anticipate, and then for the public, kind of early March. We're trying to stagger it for the webinars for the landscapers. I'm trying to line up the dealers from the store that are offering the incentive, as well as, trying to find a landscaper that does all electric landscaping services so that people can hear from their peers how they can do that, especially if you're a small business. Like, how do you talk to your customers about it and the transition? And I've definitely been out on my bicycle, or he's been out too in the field. We've been handing the discount flyers. We created our own flyer that is a little bit easier to understand, because what I was realizing when I was handing out the core postcards, so a lot of the landscapers, gardeners are so busy, they just don't have time to go to a website. And so we kind of made a radius around Menlo Park of where they could get the discounts from certain stores. And a lot of them did know about these stores. They just don't go to them until their equipment breaks and they have to go buy a new one, which could be quite a while. And so we've gotten a lot of positive feedback on that front and heard a lot of the concerns about the transition. I think their biggest fear, there's a lot of language barriers as well. A lot of them only speak Spanish, and and we've done our own research too. It does take a little bit longer during the fall and winter season to move heavy leaves. So that's their major concern. And it's trying to figure out how to have that conversation with their customers about the transition and potential increased labor costs, because a lot of them are saying they have to hire an extra person to kind of get the same 40-minute job done. With the leaf blower, it'll take like an hour during that fall season. And so they either lose customers or they are trying to figure out how to make it work. And a lot of them actually work in Palo Alto, and it's been kind of this ongoing issue where, they're trying not to use the gas equipment, but then somebody else is using the gas equipment. And so they're able to offer, a cheaper rate basically. And so they don't remain as competitive. And so that's kind of the things that we're uncovering as we're talking one-on-one with landscapers and gardeners. And we do anticipate coming to the EQC with kind of the final results of our outreach and survey and kind of what the draft ordinance is going to be in March or April. And we'll be sending postcards to property owners, landscapers, property management companies to help inform them again about the survey and the discounts that are available probably very soon. I'd say like the last week of January, early February, and to also notify them about the webinars. And we did get a comment from someone that lives like near downtown about EV charging and having the need for public charging in downtown. And I did reply back and let them know kind of where we are on that front. And again, it becomes kind of like the resource issue, but we are looking to hire another management analyst. We've been going through applications, and so hopefully we can kind of pick up that work. I've been kind of on the peripheral of looking at what we can do for public charging in our public parking lots, like at parks or in the downtown area or here at the Civic Center. Just takes a little bit more time, and I'm I've been contacting Peninsula Clean Energy on what we can do and get technical assistance on where we could potentially put them. I did ask the resident, what was the issue? Like, if there was it that she didn't maybe have at-home charging, and she did indicate that that was kind of a dire need for her because she didn't have at-home charging at first, but then she was able to get it later on, a level 2 charger, and so that kind of alleviated her need. But we're just trying to again uncover what we want to use public charging for, for long journeys or kind of a top off, but not necessarily to have someone completely rely on it as well, because that can be very hard and competitive when there's no spaces available. So that's all of my updates for tonight, and I'll pass it to Ori.
Okay, thank you. So in addition to the EV charger presentation that you received earlier in this meeting, we're also working through another item that should be coming to the EQC soon, and that's about zoning ordinance amendments that are aimed at facilitating electrification. So we're still working with our internal staff or internal stakeholders to reach agreement about the way that we would be approaching those zoning ordinance amendments. And then the next step would be to take it to the EQC and then to the Planning Commission, hopefully in February, and then to the City Council as soon as possible, which may be in the March timeframe, March or April. We're also working through, as our sustainability manager, like he mentioned, the webpage updates for electrification. So making sure that those permit requirements and process are clear and available for folks. And then the CAP number 5 roadmap, we're continuing to work on that. And then the next step would be to bring it to the internal stakeholders. And then we would bring it to the EQC and City Council later this year. And I think that is, water heaters. So good news on the water heater replacement program that's being organized by Wildan Engineering. And that's a program that will provide 100% of the cost to replace the domestic water heaters, so the smaller water heaters in city facilities. So we've reached agreement with it's the volunteers who run the Rosner House and the Little House. And it's looking like we're going to be able to move forward with that project. And so hopefully by March, those water heaters should be replaced. And so that'll help to eliminate some of the building emissions that are from the natural gas equipment that's in place now.
All right. See, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'm just very encouraged by that last bit of news. Do you have more, Mr. Paz?
That's it for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And so I see Commissioner Evans has her hand up.
Oh, thank you, Ori, for that update. And with the water heater replacements, I did not know that, and that's excellent news. I actually had one clarification question that I guess sort of relates to, I don't want to hog the presentation of our updates of the Building Electrification Subcommittee, but thank you for mentioning to the EQC that the relevant zoning and possibly noise ordinances that we're looking to potentially edit to ease electrification may be coming before the EQC. Can you just clarify with me, did you say that you foresee that coming forward in February to EQC? And then is it coming to planning after that? I guess the reason I'm asking, and this is part of our update, is that the Building Electrification Subcommittee has been meeting one-on-one to ensure Brown Act compliance with some members of the Planning Commission, where we have existing relationships, to talk to them about these potential edits and why we think they're important, and get their input so that when this comes before their commission, they understand the reason and rationale behind them. But it would be helpful to know potentially in advance when you might foresee it coming before the Planning Commission, just so we can give heads up to those folks.
Yes, yeah, so the current plan, as you mentioned, is for the presentation to come to the EQC, and then it would go to the Planning Commission with comments from the EQC kind of taken through to the Planning Commission and then all the way through to the City Council. So I think the latest information, and maybe, Rebecca, can you confirm was it March or, yeah, okay. So it would be a Planning Commission meeting in March and then a City Council meeting after that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there other commissioners wishing to share reports? Yes, Commissioner McKenna.
Thank you, Chair Cabot. Just a couple general sort of climate environmental ideas and comments. Recently, last week, there was an event called Code Red for Humanity, Pathways to Healthy Electric Cities, put on by a number of different groups, Actera being one of them. And basically the event was directed towards elected officials, city staff, climate advocates. And the idea was to educate people on the possibilities of building electrification, highlighting the policy tools that are available now, the funding tools that are available now through IRA and state and regional and Peninsula Clean Energy type incentives and rebates, and talked about the outreach tools that some cities are doing, showed examples of what different cities are doing in the Bay Area to address existing building electrification. And the event was emceed by a high school student from Gunn High School. And the last speaker was also a high school student. So it was very nice to hear the youth perspective on the climate issue. And the overriding sort of message in all of it was urgency and equity, making sure that everybody is included in this transformation and that nobody's left out, and showing that the tools that are available now really allow that to happen. So the event, like I said, was last week. A recording will be available for people to watch it on the Actera website. So I encourage people to go to that Actera website and check that out when they have the opportunity. And then I just thought I would share a real quick anecdote of experience that I had. I found out that one of my water heaters is nearing the end of its life. So I started the process of replacing it with an electric heat pump water heater. And the initial step was to get a bid. And I found it very interesting that the cost to do that was $0 with the incentives and rebates that are available today. So, you know, had I decided to replace it with a gas water heater, I don't know, $1,000, $2,000, replacing it with an electric heat pump water heater, $0. So I think that obviously every situation is different, every home is different, but there are opportunities out there for residents and building owners to do that, that transition to electric in a very economic way. And I would encourage residents and building owners to start to be a little more proactive about electrification, start to look at their home, look at their water heater and check the serial number and find out how old it is and sort of get an idea when you might need to replace that. And you might be able to avoid an emergency situation by doing that, and just to sort of accelerate this transition. And then just a couple comments to what Rebecca said, kind of a radical idea, but actually leaving the leaves on the ground does have some really good environmental reasons. So not to eliminate jobs or take money out of people's pockets, but you know, leaving those leaves on the ground might not be a bad idea. And then we talked about how to install new charging stations in the city. And I would just say, one thing to keep in mind is those city lots may become affordable housing down the road. And so we might want to think about where is the best place to put those chargers long-term. And then the only other thing I wanted to say was, I would like to maybe get on a couple other subcommittees, so I don't know when the right time to do that is. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Commissioner Schmidt.
Thanks for that. A few really quick updates. One, John just reminded me, I think that the idea of a collaboration model, we've been exploring that with different conversations with folks and trying to come together under a more collaborative way of working on issues or keeping the public informed or all that kind of stuff. So the outreach committees talked about that, and then we've got various other conversations going. But just to emphasize the importance of that, a lot of us were on Lauren and Actera's Code Red, and there was a lot of great learning there. John and Lindan hosted a great conversation at 350 Menlo around policy changes that are coming up. I actually attended a couple of really great sessions led by CRC, one on air purifiers and their distribution, and then one on the Safer Bay project, excuse me, combating sea level rise. And, so it's just, we might want to think about a point of contact model as well, similar to how the city council has representatives in different areas of the community to kind of unify perspectives. Because I find that, there's things that we might want to consider. Two to three issues that have come up. One is around flooding in the Safer Bay project. And there was a lot of conversation with Belhaven residents in the room about FEMA and the flood insurance, and that's a 10-year project. And could we start to kick off a project potentially to provide some financial relief to residents of Belhaven that need to pay that insurance until the Safer Bay project comes online. So we've started some exploratory conversations there, but that was based on just attending this meeting where we kind of learned about that and heard it firsthand directly from residents. Another one where that's come true is talking to Mayor Burt, previously Mayor Burt in Palo Alto at an event, and we were going to be talking about electrification and transportation. But then there were a lot of issues that the different cities are talking about around electricians and HVAC talent gaps to actually electrify and do a lot of the things that we're talking about. That's making the rounds in a pretty substantial way through a lot of education and a lot of city governments and things like that. So those are topics that I think by having a more collaborative model, we kind of learn about, can bring back, figure out if there's a role for the EQC. And then the third one I wanted to mention that I've been hearing, is youth activation and being able to go back and say kind of what John was saying is not only having them present, but there are a lot of activities where we were talking to Canopy earlier today, we were talking to other groups, and they want to get more, not only more community members involved, but more students involved. So there's a discussion with Park Way at Menlo Park City School District and potentially some other school districts on some of their programs and how to bring those forward. So that's all just to say, like, that felt like a really random list, but it was only through this ability to kind of go out and start collaborating with these groups and having these conversations that we're able to go, hey, this is what's actually happening beyond the climate action plan. This is some other stuff that's really important that's happening below the surface, and we need to be able to kind of bring that back and discuss it as a group and make even more recommendations to city council. So I want to, that's just a kind of a reflection of going out and talking to different nonprofits and other people working on this. So what that's worth.
All right. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And, it kind of gives an idea for can other subcommittees, it's built into the outreach subcommittee's name, but can other subcommittees look at this as an opportunity to have an event of some sort out in a community of interest for their subcommittee's task that gets them in touch with more citizens, and they get to really hear what folks are interested in and what kind of solutions are coming to mind. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, and Tom, just to build on that really quick, it's almost like, do we have a representative with all the major players who are doing work? So we're on 350. I talked to Lauren at Actera, but I wouldn't say I'm regularly in touch with her. We've got Marlon from Diane and Menlo Spark. So I think we have good individual relationships, but we don't have a sort of a formal representation model where we can bring all this stuff back. CRC, I try to attend when I can, but I'm not really assigned to their work. So it's a little bit more of a formal thing for the group to be thinking about, because city council kind of, Betsy, I think is our liaison or point of contact, and maybe we need a similar model for the EQC with these groups. Anyway.
All right, thank you. And Commissioner Evans.
I was just going to follow up a little bit more about the 2 pilot projects that I mentioned earlier on in the call, and mentioned that these are 2 that I've described publicly a number of times, and they're shovel ready and ready to go, but we're looking for funding to cover the capital installation costs. These are the ones with Life Moves, and Haven House is the homeless name of the homeless shelter in Menlo Park, doing full electrification and retrofit of that property, and then 2 units owned by MidPen, which is a nonprofit organization, highly reputable, that offers affordable housing, 38 units in total. And we have letters of commitment from those 2 nonprofit organizations to move forward. We've had a couple of grants that we had hoped were going to fall through, but we in partnership with Menlo Spark have put together a crowdfunding link just recently that we're hoping to circulate amongst the public to raise money for that. We are actively working to fundraise to cover those costs since we are ready to go. I'm hopeful that if and when the city receives the 4.5 million that has been earmarked for electrification in our low-income community, that potentially some of that can also go to covering the cost of those projects. I'll keep you posted.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Schmidt.
Just a side thing, Angela, if you want to connect offline, I'm doing a lot of grant research for a lot of other projects. I'd love to learn more just in case I run across any grants that I could forward you and the team's way. So maybe we should grab coffee or something.
Thank you. And that was actually, I'm glad you mentioned that. If folks have additional leads, please feel free to email me separately. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any Commissioner McKenna.
Really quick, I just failed to mention that one of the keynote speakers for Code Red was Danelle Baird from Block Power. So very applicable to our city.
All right, thank you. And I was able to virtually attend that Code Red event and hear Danelle Baird speak about Block Power and the partnership or collaboration with City of Menlo Park, and his enthusiasm for putting together that job training aspect of it. That's a kind of a major feature of their company, and one of the ways they try to go about doing things. But they're basically a kind of a concierge service in different places where they operate, and then they try to train workforce to provide to contractors that they contract with to go to install projects. So they're kind of an interesting collaborator working up and down the value chain for getting their projects done. But he definitely had good things to say about his enthusiasm for working with Menlo Park on low-income housing electrification and also available to all residents in Menlo Park. All right. Oh, yes, Vice Chair Headley.
Thank you. I was thinking about what Commissioner Evans had mentioned with regard to the crowdfunding link. And I saw that through the Menlo Spark newsletter. And it seems like an action that we could potentially all take to get that out into the communities that we're a part of. I'm thinking specifically, like Rebecca, I don't know if that's something that we could add to the city newsletter. You know, the email that goes out once a week. Or if we want to ask, so some of the things we've been doing with the outreach subcommittee is emailing Betsy and Jen and asking them to include it in their weekly or biweekly emails. And In Menlo has been a great partner for us as well to get the message out to the community. So Angela, if you need any help with that, Tom and Jeff and I have been on the outreach and, you know, kind of doing that. And we'd be happy to plug you in if that's supportive, but I think I'm taking an action item to, you know, post it in my social media circles and send it to my, like the people in my world. And maybe we can all take that on and see if people want to make, I'm assuming it's a tax deductible donation.
Yes. Yes.
So, you know,
Thank
people
you.
are always looking for tax deductions. It seems like a nice way to make a difference right here in our community. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, thank you. I actually love all of those ideas. I'm going to write them down. And yes, it's tax deductible. It's being funneled through Menlo Spark. So yes. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other reports from commissioners or staff? Okay, and seeing none, we've come to the part of the meeting where we can adjourn it. Thank you so much for taking part in our January 18th EQC meeting. And look forward to talking with you all soon.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Right.